We created it, but now the administration is giving it for free to the rest of the world. The Obama administration about to hand control of the Internet to what it describes as the global community, giving that, quote, community oversight that manages technical functions and website addresses. So what does this mean for you as you surf the web? Joining us now is Michael Warren with the Weekly Standard in Washington. Michael, thanks a lot for joining us this morning. So we've created the Internet. We've done a great job sustaining it, keeping it running. It works great. Why would we do this?
Well, first let's talk about exactly what's happening here. So ICANN is this private organization, and it kind of controls the Internet or makes sure the Internet's working. So when you or I type in foxnews.com or weeklystandard.com, it goes to the right website. It connects us to the servers that get us the information that we want. And the federal government, specifically the Commerce Department, has had a contract with ICANN to have oversight, to make sure that everything's running smoothly. So that's what's being given up here. It's that contract. It ends in 2015, and the Obama administration has said, let's open this up to global governance, to governance that includes other countries like China and like Russia. So that's really what we're looking at.
But that's I mean, why would we do that? The Internet, or the proto-Internet anyway, was created by the U.S. military, by the Pentagon. As we know, tax dollars built it, and we've run it well. Our oversight has worked. Why in the world would we give China more power over the Internet?
That's a really good question. You look at some of the revelations the last couple of years. Edward Snowden and the NSA leaks have sort of given that movement. You've heard this from governments in China and Russia and other places that, the United States has too much control over the Internet, which is a little ironic since they censor the Internet in countries like those. And I think the Edward Snowden revelations have kind of given a lot of momentum to those folks to say, aha, see, the U.S. can't be trusted with the Internet, so this needs to be governed by the rest of us. But of course, as I just said, there's all kinds of problems with that when you allow governments that censor the Internet and sort of withhold information from their citizens via the Internet, giving them control of it. There's some problems. There's some reasons to be concerned.
Well, so basically you're saying the Obama administration believes that China has the moral authority in this conversation, and we're giving in to their demands because who are we not to? So what are the risks in this?
Well, I think what you're looking at is not just those governments like China getting control, or at least having a say in the control of how you get from typing something into your computer to getting that information. But we have to think about as well what those internet companies that Google is of course the one we always think of. What's going to happen when they're not just dealing with the United States oversight and regulation of the internet, but these other countries. You look at what Google did several years ago to try to get their servers in China. Of course, China has all those censorship laws on the internet, and what they did was they actually agreed to blocking certain sites if the Chinese government didn't approve of them.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Right, they're going along with censorship in a communist country. Pretty shocking. Michael?
Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? Tonight, what if the Constitution no longer applied? What if the whole purpose of the Constitution was to limit the government? What if Congress's enumerated powers in the Constitution no longer limited Congress, but were actually used as a justification to extend Congress's authority over every realm of human life? What if the president, meant to be an equal to Congress, has instead become a democratically elected, term-limited monarch? What if the president assumed that everything he did was legal just because he's the president? What if he could interrupt your regularly scheduled radio and TV programming for a special message from him? What if he could declare war on his own? What if he could read your emails and your texts without a search warrant? What if he could kill you without warning? What if Supreme Court justices no longer looked to the Constitution to determine the constitutionality of a law, but rather simply to what justices who preceded them thought about it? What if the rights and principles guaranteed in the Constitution have been so distorted in the past 200 years as to be unrecognizable by the founders? What if the 50 states were no longer sovereign entities, equals to each other, and parents of the federal government they voluntarily constituted? What if the states were mere provinces of a totally nationalized and fully centralized government? What if the Constitution was amended stealthily, not by constitutional amendments duly ratified by the states, but by the constant and persistent expansion of the federal government's role in our lives? What if the federal government decided if its own powers were proper and constitutional? What if the Constitution were no longer the supreme law of the land? What if you needed a license from the government to speak, to assemble, or to protest against the government? What if the government didn't like what you planned to say, and so it didn't give you the license? What if the right to keep and bear arms only applied to the government? What if posse comitatus, the federal law that prohibits our military from occupying our streets, were no longer in effect? What if the government considered the military an adequate dispenser of domestic law enforcement? What if cops looked and acted like troops and you couldn't distinguish the military from the police? What if you were not secure in your person, in your papers, and in your property? What if federal agents could write their own search warrants in defiance of the Constitution? What if the government could decide when you were and were not entitled to a jury trial? What if the government could take your property whenever it wanted? What if the government could continue prosecuting you until it got the verdict it wanted? What if the government could force you to testify against yourself simply by labeling you a domestic terrorist? What if the government could torture you until you said what the government wanted to hear? What if people running for president actually supported torture? What if the government tortured your children to get to you? What if government judges and government lawyers intimidated juries into convicting the innocent? What if the government could send you to your death and your innocence meant nothing so long as the government's procedures were followed? What if America's prison population, the largest in the world, was a cruel and unusual way for a country to be free? What if half the prison population never harmed anyone but themselves? What if the people had no rights except those the government chose to let them have? What if the states had no rights except to do as the federal government commanded? What if our elected officials didn't really live among us, but instead all had their hearts and homes in Washington, D.C.? What if the government could strip you of your rights because of where your mother was when you were born? What if the income tax was unconstitutional? What if the states were convinced to give up their representation in Congress? What if the government tried to ban you from using a substance in your body that is older than the government itself? What if voting didn't mean anything anymore because both political parties stand for big government? What if the government could write any law, regulate any behavior, and tax any event? The Constitution be damned. What if the government was the reason we don't have a Constitution anymore? What if you could love your country but hate what the government has done to it? What if sometimes to love your country you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if I'm right? What if the government is wrong? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
The government, the Department of Defense, said that the Drudge Report and alternative media were making it difficult for people to believe them. They said, we don't have any credibility. People are treating what we're telling them as mindless propaganda. Remember that article? Government promises to stop lying because of Drudge Report Spotlight. And that was about a year ago. Now the empire is striking back. Now we see the U.S. military is blocking Infowars.com for 700,000 service members worldwide, labeling our site as violence, hate, and racism. Now, to point out the scope of this, the Navy's private intranet system is second in size only to the entire public internet. And it was just yesterday that we pointed out that Blue Coat corporate web filtering service, which is used by many large corporations, had also blocked InfoWars. That blocking was taken off after people complained about that. There's also an interesting article on Infowars.com from Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, where he talks about what real journalism looked like with his experiences in country with Michael Hastings. So make sure you check that out. But it's interesting to see how these lies are unfolding. If you look at the Telegraph, you see that their headline today is the Iraq crisis. ISIS jihadists seize Saddam Hussein's chemical weapons stockpile. Hey, I thought that first he had weapons of mass destruction, then he didn't. Now it appears that he does. And then this line, which I think is kind of interesting, the Saudi Arabians are warning Britain and U.S. not to meddle in Iraq. I would say that's a little bit late. But
This is James Corbett, CorbettReport.com, joined today in Acapulco, Mexico, with Dan Dix of PressForTruth.ca and Luke Rudkowski of WeAreChange.org. Today we're going to be talking about something that affects all three of us. Dan, of course, in Canada, Luke in America, myself in Japan. That is the pressing dangers to internet freedom in legislation that has either just been passed or is being passed or wants to be passed in all three of these countries. We're going to start with Dan talking about what's happening in Canada. I know you've been covering this recently. What are the latest threats to internet freedom in Canada?
Well, the latest one that's threatening us right now is Bill C-51. 3 years have passed. It's still not going to fly. So now that the Canadians are getting involved in fighting terrorism abroad, now we've brought this onto us. So this is why they're trying to pass this on now. Bill C-51, whisk it through in the face of all the current terrorism going on to restrict the rights of people such as us. This thing is going to restrict our abilities to be able to communicate with one another. It'll give the intelligence communities, the intelligence agencies, the ability to preemptively stop us from doing things if they suspect that we may be involved in some sort of terrorism activities. So this is detrimental for Canadians, so that it's incredibly important to stand up for this. As you said, this is not only happening in Canada, it's going on all over the world right now.
And, of course, playing the terror card in order to clamp down on freedom, no stranger to the U.S. situation, where Luke Rudkowski, of course, is reporting on the latest dangers in Congress regarding this type of legislation. What's going on there?
Well, of course, we know Congress tried to pass SOPA and PIPA. They failed, luckily, but they still try to throw their legislation in other bigger pieces of legislation. It makes it virtually impossible to really get through everything. But Congress has not been yet successful in censoring the Internet. But Obama, during his State of the Union, he said we have to protect our children from cyber terrorism, and what he's trying to pass is this new executive order on cyber legislation, cyber security, that will ultimately make it illegal to even view documents that are classified. So if you get shared documents, someone gives you and emails you documents, just like the Snowden leaks or all these other documents that the government doesn't want you to see, that they don't officially leak themselves, which they do sometimes when it looks good in their favor. If you are a receiver of those documents, you face 10 years in jail and a $100,000 penalty. So Obama's trying to ram through these laws since Congress has failed, and he's doing it under the guise of protecting our children from cyber terrorism, which is obviously pieces of flying crap. So,
of course, and that sounds extremely familiar to those who are familiar with the Japanese law. It was just passed in last December, which also criminalizes the reception of any material that the government deems classified or secret by journalists. So for the first time, criminalizing real journalism in Japan, although there isn't much there anyway because of the club system that they have in place to basically limit any type of journalism that goes on there. But of course, we all know, unfortunately, all too well about the problems. The question is, what about the solutions? Luke, you bring up SOPA and PIPA, which of course was not successful in being passed a couple of years ago, but of course it's the war of attrition. They keep bringing it back. The question is this something that we're going to get blocked legislatively, or is there a more fundamental level at which we can be attacking this? Luke, your thoughts?
Well, one thing that we know is that the system, the powers that be, always take 2 steps forwards and 1 step back. This is their step back, but they're going to make 2 steps forwards. So we have to be aware of what's happening within our kind of legal political system, and bring attention to it. Just this mere fact of other people being aware of this made sure that this bill would not pass. Our attention and what we focus on and what we want, it's a constant tug of war between the powers that be and the people who are supposedly represented by the government. So I've never been a fan of lobbying politicians. I've never been a fan of asking criminals for help with crime, because you're going to get more crime, and the government always finds, out of a problem, a solution that only works out better for them, which creates more problems. I believe in spreading attention. I believe in people innovating new technologies, new encryptions, new kind of outlets that kind of bypass the old system. So I'm really optimistic, because we've seen so many people, whenever a government creates a roadblock, bam, they always create a different way around it. We've seen that in the Bitcoin community. We've seen that in the encryption community. We're learning every day about what's safe and what's not safe. So again, to me, empower yourself with knowledge. Don't seek answers from the criminals creating the problems, but seek answers from your community, your people, and all the innovators. And especially with all this advance in technology, the government is having a very hard time at creating all these laws to stop the free flow of information. So I'm optimistic. I don't think they will be successful, but we have to be alert. And the only way they can't be successful if we give it our attention and fight it as best as we can by spreading the information as wide as we can.
You bring up good points. Technology always the double-edged sword. If they try to use it against us, there are people who will find ways to use it against them as well, which is exactly what this free internet media is all about. But also, you bring up the point that it was the mass mobilization that happened around things like SOPA and PIPA that made the blockage of that legislation possible because of the mass awareness. It's one of the few issues. 14 years of occupation of Afghanistan, 1 million dead Iraqis, all these things don't matter to people, but talk about censoring the internet and people get up in arms. How about in Canada? Is this one of those touchstone issues that people care about in that degree?
Not enough. The problem in Canada is that not enough people are really aware that this is even an issue in the first place. So I think in our case, awareness is absolutely key. I put out a video about this back in 2011, ranting and raving and screaming to people, we got to do something about this. And I didn't get very much of a response about that at all. Now that it's more prominent and it's in the news and it's in the mainstream, people are starting to pay a little bit more attention. If they had paid attention back in 2011, perhaps we wouldn't be here now. So I really think awareness is key at this point. So some of the things we have to continue to do are things like we're doing right now. Put this information out there. Let people know that their rights are being taken away from them online, and unless they do something about it, nothing's going to change.
Also, the old phrase "use it or lose it" comes to mind because, again, it's one of those things that it is a muscle, and the more you flex it, the stronger it becomes. And in that regard, thinking of all of the ways that this technology can be used and is sorely underutilized by a lot of the public out there. Obviously, citizen media like We Are Change, like Press for Truth, like hopefully the Corbett Report are ways that anyone out there literally in the audience who is listening to this, who can make a video, who can do a podcast, who can put out a video, or who can even share this information with others, is doing something to help in this regard. And also, we've got to keep using the internet for what it's for, which is spreading of freedom and truth.
But if we use it, we empower ourselves, nothing is impossible. The future of society at large is within our hands. They're trying to take away this amazing moment in history that we never had before, but they won't be successful unless we stand up for our rights and be vocal about it.
Dan, any words of encouragement for Canadians out there teetering on the fence?
Now is the time to get involved. If you're not excited about getting into exposing these issues, now is the time. I mean, things are ramping up like exponentially. So I just encourage you, if you've never done this before, if you're just getting into this, dive in head first and start making changes. You know, go online, get a YouTube channel, start posting on Facebook, get a Twitter account, get this information out there. Whatever you can do, just dive head in.
Jason Basler of the Free Thought Project and Nick Burley of the Anti-Media, both successful independent media organizations, and we're going to be talking about a lot of important things with the censorship that's happening and also possible solutions. Now, Nick, first of all, like, we all go through a lot of incredible kind of like censorship, a lot of things behind the scenes that people do not know about. We faced it very severely here at We Are Change with YouTube, Google, and AdSense just screwing us over. What have you been dealing with, and what do you think is the latest kind of news with censorship and independent free media?
We're seeing that come to a head lately. I know you guys at We Are Change have been dealing with it on your YouTube channel. Keep in mind, Google owns YouTube as well. But we deal with this in the alternative media because we're challenging this system. And Google is a huge part of the government. I mean, they've got executives that work in economic development things within the Obama administration and stuff like that. So whenever people try to challenge this status quo, they may or may not face retaliation via censorship from companies like Google or Facebook or Yahoo that have a really heavy hand in this industry. And so that's one thing that I think people need to start understanding about what we're doing, is that there's a lot of forces against us. And, you know, we're talking about little companies. I mean, I don't know how many employees you guys have, but we have maybe 10 people, 15 people working with us. And we have very little resources, and we're kind of just working from the cuff. We're talking about billion-dollar industries that are heavily connected into the government. And whenever we start making waves into undermining that system, because in many ways that system is oppressive, they do what they can to shut down the message, and they try to kill the messenger. And that's what's been happening with many of these websites, whether we talk about antiwar.com, Mint Press News, on the anti-media. We're on our last warning from Google, because our last one came from an article we did on Abu Ghraib. Abu Ghraib is where the U.S. government was torturing people in Iraq. And we cover this story because this is the news that people need to see. But then Google says, hey, you can't cover this news because it shows bad things happening. It's like, this is the stuff that we need people to see. If we're censoring that, then we're not letting the truth get out there, you know? And they're censoring us. But they're just doing it in a way where it's like, oh, you just violated our policies. We're indirectly having to censor you. It's a huge problem, man. It's a huge problem.
Yeah, it used to be, don't be evil, Google's model. Now it's like, don't show evil. Now they have over, so many different lobbyists over there on K Street in Washington, totally working with the government. Now, Jason, how has your news organization, I mean, you guys with the Free Thought Project have been doing a lot of incredible work. Have you guys been affected by the censorship as well, and what's your status?
Sure, absolutely. Facebook has particularly targeted us over a lot of different arbitrary posts which don't necessarily violate terms of contract, but one way or another they're pulling down our posts, which obviously hurt our traffic income. And so more or less it's been a huge issue with us. I think I've been banned 3 30-day bans within 2 months with different accounts, obviously, but it's certainly been affecting our progress and our flow of work. So it's become more of a problem over the past
See, we were talking yesterday, and I remember, whenever I made a Facebook post, bam, viral, 50, 100,000, 250,000, 500,000, one post I even made before got, 18 million views. It's just like, bam, viral, hit. And now it's like, hit, wait, smaller hit. Maybe you get lucky in a hit. And then also we have the fact that Facebook, we actually had a page with over, 500,000 likes. They sold our page without even notification, without even saying anything, to Time Warner. And Time Warner bought our page. That was a fan page of Jesse Ventura's, 500,000 people, without even notifying us. So you could just see, Time Warner Cable, all these big corporations kind of engulfing and trying to suppress the free speech, the kind of evil that we're trying to expose, because we're ultimately kind of exposing them. Now, when we're doing that, we were kind of talking about solutions. Nick, you were just talking about some as well. Where do you think we should go from all these problems that we are facing?
I think we need to start building new companies that are ideologically opposite to what Google and Facebook have become, which are these highly centralized corporations. We need to have decentralized ideas, kind of like what Bitcoin is, but for the internet, and to start building peer-to-peer internet systems. And we want to help companies that are ethical companies that believe in the ideas of individual freedom and rolling back oppression. We want to work with these companies. We can help them. They can help us.
We could help each other to maintain this kind of new journalistic approach to combating the mainstream media. And that's one thing I wanted to touch on as well, is that this is such a brand new technology. We're pioneers in social media. Everyone should be taking up this opportunity right now to be spreading the word. And if you're passionate about spreading this information, you're already halfway there. You have the motivation to make sure that we're passing on this information that's valuable to each other. So that's one thing I would mention. And also just networking with each other. I mean, me and this guy networked with each other in the very beginning stages of the anti-media, when it had around 2,000 likes on Facebook page, and we've helped each other in so many different ways, just networking and helping pass on information. So that's one thing I would suggest, is trying to network as many people as you can.
I think cooperation, you're right, cooperation is really important in this new movement. Of course we have competing ideas sometimes and all that stuff, but I think cooperating together, because there's the elephant in the room is this oligarchy. It's not just the government, it's not just corporate, it's both. And we're opposed to that. So I think we should work together, even if we have opposing ideas sometimes, maybe varying philosophies and that kind of thing. It's important to cooperate in order to look at the bigger picture, which is rolling back the state, rolling back oppression, rolling back authoritarianism, is the broader project that we really need to work on. And whether you have a little website, whether you have a huge website, I think it's really important that we all network back together and really come together to push all these ideas forward. And that's how we can take this thing to the next level.
You are the media. It's something that Luke from We Are Change always says. You are the media. So, take that into yourself, empower yourself, and share this information.
Many people say vote with your dollar. I say vote with your shares and your likes. It's just as important, because you are going around the systems that are trying to suppress the information. There's a reason subscribers to this channel are not getting the latest videos that are coming out here. It's algorithms, and that's what they did. I remember the main reason Loose Change was as popular as it was because Google had an algorithm for the top most viewed videos, and people were able to see this is the most popular video. YouTube had the same thing. Then they took it away, and now all their corporate buddies
and their partnerships that they have are recommended videos for you. Same with the Facebook news feed. That's how they kind of decentralize everything. And all these changing algorithms are extremely, extremely confusing, and that's how they get you, and that's how they deny you access to information that you are subscribed to that you will not even see. I don't know if you guys have any other comments that you want to add to that.
Exactly, man. I mean, people go and they like pages, they subscribe to YouTube channels, and they expect to receive that information. But then, Facebook or YouTube decides, like, well, those people just aren't going to receive that information anymore. And it really is a form of censorship. Indirectly, they blame it on their algorithm changes and all that stuff. But it really is, to me, a way of censoring truth, censoring these ideas that may be controversial or maybe undermining to the current paradigm of things. And that's why it's so scary to them, the prospect of, like, oh, this one person with a cell phone took this one video of something happening, and it could undermine a huge part of this scheme that they're running against us. And that's why they're so scared, and that's why they want to put this overall, they want to throw it wide, cast a big net and really censor everybody that has any kind of information that would challenge the status quo, more or less.
And the conversation for the solution starts right here. Definitely, let's build this. Let's build an alternative to what we're facing. If we all come together and put aside our differences, we could do it. And vote with your likes and your shares. Thank you again so much for watching. Subscribe.